the moon is not lined up correctly to get an eclipse. The next almost total eclipse is in November of this year. Yeah, we're going to end this stream around 2 o'clock in the morning, our time. You're very welcome for the stream. A good night or a good morning, good evening to wherever you are on Earth. I see someone saying that their students sign on in 20 minutes. Maybe we can hang out for a couple more minutes so they can see something. The video, I believe, is recorded on YouTube and will remain up there. So I know the video of the conjunction that we did back in 2020 is available there. You can find us where you're viewing us here at UHIFA on YouTube. That's what we are on Facebook and Twitter as well. And you can just Google University of Hawaii Institute for Astronomy and find us, our website. Our website is, I will put it in here, is ifa.hawaii.edu. And we are at UHIFA on social media. So some people ask, what's the longest lunar eclipse? So the Earth's shadow is much larger than the diameter of the moon. And this evening or this morning, we're just skirting the edge of Earth's shadow. So we only had about 14 minutes of totality. But if you go right through the middle of Earth's shadow, you can have over an hour and a half of totality. The longest lunar eclipse that's coming up in any reasonable time is going to be in the year 2264, when none of us will be around to witness it. And that one will be almost 2 hours. That's going to be a dark eclipse, I imagine, if humans are still around to see it. We're doing this from Honolulu, Hawaii. So the next solar eclipse is in June 10th. It's an annular eclipse, which means that you have a ring of light around the moon during the eclipse, so that the moon is a little bit farther from Earth and therefore it looks smaller on the sky, and so it doesn't block 100% of the sun. We will have a total solar eclipse in 2024 that we'll be able to see in most of the United States. If you've ever seen a solar eclipse, you know it's a pretty amazing event. I went to Oregon to see the one a couple years ago. That was pretty incredible. That was my first eclipse. We have astronomers who actually study the sun during eclipses because you can see the outer parts of the sun. One of our colleagues, Shadia Habal, travels around the world catching eclipses, and really amazing images they have with special telescopes and filters showing the material streaming off of the sun. It's many times the radius of the sun. Pretty incredible. And you can only study those portions of the sun during eclipses. Otherwise, the sun is too bright, and spacecraft that observe the sun can't see as close to the sun as you can during an eclipse. So their views are pretty spectacular. Her team is called the Solar Wind Sherpas, and I'll just put their website up here because they have amazing images of the sun. Someone asked where the 2024 solar eclipse would be visible. There are maps of the path of totality on timeanddate.com. So it starts, it crosses over Mexico and then sort of over the eastern central United States and up towards sort of the area of Maine and the Canadian border. Some places that I'll see it: Cleveland, Rochester, Montreal, Indianapolis, Toledo, Little Rock, Dallas. So lots of significant cities will see at least part of the totality.
To my father's property.
Oh.
Really close to.
So someone's asking if most tracking telescopes track this well. If you buy a decent go-to telescope and you align it correctly, so before we started this broadcast, Alex spent some time aligning his telescope so that it was leveled and knew where north was and things like that, then it'll track well. If you don't align it correctly, then you're not going to get good tracking. If you're looking up at the sky, the moon was near the constellation Scorpius. So if you see some bright stars near the moon, then you're seeing the constellation Scorpius. So we'll hang out here for another 10 or 15 minutes and then we're going to pack it up. We hope you'll check out our website, ifa.hawaii.edu, for news stories. We are a large academic astronomy unit at the University of Hawaii. We have 45 or so PhD astronomers, 30 to 40 graduate students. We run observatories on Mauna Kea and Haleakala and participate in space missions. We have an undergraduate and a graduate program, so if you're thinking about a career in astronomy or just want to take some astronomy classes, you can come here to the University of Hawaii at Manoa and take classes from some of us. Someone is asking about Jupiter and Saturn. So Saturn is rising first. So Saturn will be a little bit higher in the sky than Jupiter, and Jupiter is the brighter one, which is rising a little bit later. And they're rising almost to due east. They should not be very high in the sky yet. And the bright oranger star high up in the sky is Arcturus or Hokulea. Someone's asking that they went at 4:11 Pacific Standard Time. I don't know where you are, Jenny Chen, so it depends where you are on Earth, but California did not have a view of totality because California is not facing the right way to see the total eclipse. Everyone's welcome for the stream and the commentary. I'm glad you're enjoying it, and I'm glad we can answer some of your questions. Yeah, someone's asking about the stars that are close to the moon. Scorpio looks kind of like a backwards curved check mark to me. That's probably a bad description, but it's the best I can do off the top of my head. And the moon is kind of cradled by the check mark of Scorpio. We don't have a big enough field of view here to show you all the stars with this setup. So here in Hawaii, Jupiter and Saturn are rising now. Depending on what's on your horizon, if there's mountains or something in the way, you won't see them. You have to look towards the eastern horizon. I can't see them. My horizon is blocked by my eastern horizon is blocked by mountains. But there are a lot of apps you can get on your phone or on your computer that will show you what's visible right now. A lot of great phone apps. You just, if you have a smartphone, an Android or an iOS phone, you can just point to somewhere in the sky and it'll show you what's up. Google has a great program, Google Sky. If you want to understand the geometry of lunar and solar eclipses, you can just Google lunar eclipse geometry and you'll find lots of videos that show you what's happening and why you don't get them all the time. If the orbit of the moon was exactly in the same plane as the orbit of the Earth is around the sun, then we would get an eclipse every month. We would get a solar eclipse when the moon was between the sun and the Earth. That's when we have new moon. The moon is backlit by the sun, so we see the dark part of the moon. The moon's not lit for us. That's new moon. And if it was lined up with the sun every time, we would get a solar eclipse every month at new moon, and we would get a lunar eclipse every month at full moon. But because the orbit of the moon is tilted relative to Earth's orbit, sometimes the moon is a little bit above the sun or a little bit below the sun compared to Earth, and so we don't get an eclipse. The place where the moon's orbit intersects the Earth's orbit is called a node. And in order to get an eclipse, that node has to occur when the moon, the Earth, and the sun are in a straight line relative to each other, not when the moon is someplace else in its orbit around the Earth. Shout out to my friends Chris and Ryan, who I see are hanging on here in the early morning hours. I'm glad some of you around the world are getting a clear view like we are, and I'm glad those of you who got cloudy skies or don't get the full lunar eclipse where you are were able to join us. Someone asking what the supermoon is. So the orbit of the moon around the Earth is not a perfect circle. It's an ellipse. It's a little bit elongated. So sometimes the moon gets closer and farther from the Earth in its orbit. When the moon is closest to us, it's called perigee. That means closest point to Earth. When it's farthest, it's called apogee. So when the moon is closer to Earth, it looks a little bit bigger, and we call that a supermoon. So actually, perigee was about a day ago, and so the moon is really close to Earth, comparatively speaking. It's only a few percent difference, 7% closer, plus 7% farther away, or minus 7% closer. So it's not a huge difference in distance, but it is noticeable. And so the moon does look bigger at perigee than it does at apogee by quite a bit. Yeah, we're now well past totality. Totality ended a little more than half an hour ago. And now you can see that the copper color is not so visible anymore. And we're probably going to end this feed in a few minutes. It'll be available on our YouTube channel here to rewatch. We have videos from some of our students talking about their research and some talks about astronomy. We'll be populating it with more videos over the next few months from our past public presentations. And again, you can keep up with events going on here, astronomy news, public events that we'll start having again as COVID decreases at our website, ifa.hawaii.edu, and our Twitter and Facebook, UHIFA. So I think we're going to get ready to go to sleep. I'll get my 4 hours of sleep before it's time to wake up the kids and take them to school. I don't know what time Alex has to go to work. Alex is lucky. He tells me he got the day off, so he can stay up, but I'm not. So again, thank you all for joining us. We're the University of Hawaii Institute for Astronomy. My name is Roy Gal. My colleagues Carolyn and Zach helping out on answering questions, and Alex Dierba providing the feed from here in Honolulu, Hawaii, where we're lucky to have clear skies and a great view of this total lunar eclipse, the super flower blood moon eclipse. Flower moon because it's May when flowers bloom. That's just a colloquial name for the full moon in May. Super because the moon was closer to Earth, was close to perigee, so it looks bigger. And a blood moon because it looks red during totality. That's a relatively new term. Everyone uses it now. It's pretty amazing how quickly things come into our language. All right, I'm going to turn off our live stream here, and that'll be the end of our broadcast from Hawaii. Thank you again for joining us.